Natalie Wood was the star Hollywood couldn't get enough of. America's sweetheart, beloved by millions. But her life off-screen, that was another story. Manipulated by her mother, exploited by powerful men, and haunted by an ominous prophecy about dark water, Natalie's journey was filled with more twists than the scripts she brought to life. And then there's her death, a tragic end surrounded by contradictions, unanswered questions, and shifting stories. Today, we're diving into the life and legacy of a woman who was as complex and layered as the role she played. But before we get into that story, if you like your true crime brief and bingeable, you found the right place. I give you at least 2 episodes per week, so hit the follow button now, and welcome to 10-Minute Murder. One hand, one heart, even death won't part us now. Those dreamy lyrics from West Side Story sound like a promise, don't they? A vowing of undying love between 2 star-crossed lovers, played to perfection by Richard Beymer and Natalie Wood. Together, they became the faces of one of Hollywood's most iconic musicals, leaving audiences in awe for generations. But here's the kicker. If anyone needed a little undying love, or heck, maybe even just a hug, it was Natalie Wood. Beneath the glitz and the glamour, her life was more tragic backstory than fairy tale ending. Born in 1938 in San Francisco, Natalie Wood entered the world with stars practically stitched into her baby blanket, and a family ready to cash in on them. Her parents, Nikolai and Maria Zakharenko, were Russian immigrants chasing the ever-elusive American dream. Unfortunately, their dream came with a catch. They were pretty sure their ticket to success was wrapped up in their talented little daughter. By the time Natalie was 4, she was trotted off to work in front of the camera, perfecting her doe-eyed innocence while her dad perfected his drinking habit. Meanwhile, her mom Maria was less supportive cheerleader and more strict Soviet drill sergeant. Keeping Natalie and her sisters on a schedule so tight could have been designed by a Bond villain. Maria even added a little flair by scaring the daylights out of them at every single opportunity. Fun childhood, right? Here's where strict parenting veered into the straight-up bizarre. After a gypsy fortune teller warned Maria that one of her daughters would die in dark open water, she turned the family home into a live-action Final Destination. The unlucky, doomed daughter, Natalie, their golden goose, and Maria's retirement plan. Growing up under this prophecy was anything but idyllic. Natalie avoided water like she was cursed, even steering clear of the backyard pool she'd one day own in her Hollywood heyday. A glamorous starlet with a fear of her own luxury. Dramatic? Sure. But when your mom acts like Poseidon's got your number, the deep end is off limits. Still, Natalie's on-screen presence was pure sunshine. Soft, warm, and captivating, she dazzled audiences and became a household name by her teens. Girls across America didn't just admire her, they wanted to be her, perfect hair and all. Time wasn't on Natalie's side, and the ingenue act couldn't last forever. Enter rebel without a cause. As Judy, a rebellious teen stirring the pot, Natalie shed her innocent image and stepped into the role light years from her real-life personality. Sharing the screen with James Dean, she proved she was more than a sweet face. This was her transformation. Hollywood had boxed her in for years, but with one defiant role, Natalie broke free. Audiences could not get enough. As she grew into a Hollywood icon, her talent only deepened. 11 Academy Award nominations later, with 10 wins under her belt, Natalie Wood wasn't just a star, she was the star. Her life sparkled like a fairy tale. But fairy tales gloss over the ugly truths. Beneath Hollywood's glittering veneer lay a far darker story, one the cameras didn't capture. By this time, Natalie's father, Nikolai, had fully embraced his role as the family drunk, a position he held with alarming dedication. His drinking soon turned violent, adding another layer of chaos to an already oppressive household. Meanwhile, Maria was still in charge, running the show with an iron fist and a steady stream of terrifying prophecy reminders, because nothing says family bonding like ominous predictions about your watery demise. For Natalie, there was no escape. At home, her parents manipulated her every move, ensuring the money kept pouring in. On set, directors used their own brand of coercion to squeeze out the perfect performance. Wherever she went, Natalie was boxed in by people who saw her as a means to an end rather than a person. It wasn't just control, it was soul-crushing, and Natalie had nowhere to turn. From an early age, Natalie learned to see danger everywhere. Not the playful, under-the-bed kind, but real, tangible threats no one protected her from. Instead of shielding her, those around Natalie often nudged, sometimes shoved, her straight into harm's way. At home, some dangers were oddly comforting, like her doll collection, which came alive to keep her company. It's cute until you realize that's just lonely child code for "I had no one else." But the more sinister dangers, those were very real, lurking beyond her understanding, waiting to strike. By 15, Natalie's life became a full-blown Hollywood soap opera. When she came home with big news, her high school sweetheart had proposed. She'd said yes. She probably expected congratulations. Instead, she got Maria's wrath, a level of fury that could have made the devil himself take notes. Maria wasn't just angry, she was calculating. To her, Natalie's high school Romeo wasn't just a distraction, he was a threat to her iron grip on Natalie's career and the family's golden ticket. Worse, Maria had already someone else in mind for her daughter, Frank Sinatra. Old Blue Eyes himself, a man not only old enough to be Natalie's father, but with cufflinks likely older than her teenage fiancé. For Maria, love was irrelevant when her career connections were on the line. According to a book by Frank Sinatra's former right-hand man, George Jacobs, Maria wasn't just overbearing, she was downright exploitive. She orchestrated what can only be described as a sleazy Hollywood audition, dragging Natalie to Sinatra's home under the guise of a casual meeting. The unspoken plan? To deliver her underage daughter on a silver platter, ensuring Sinatra got what he wanted without the messy business of legal trouble. Maria, ever the master manipulator, had already set the stage. She forced Natalie to end her engagement with her high school sweetheart, dressed her in a tight black party dress, and practically delivered her into Sinatra's lap. And Sinatra, a man not exactly famous for his restraint, didn't hesitate to play along. Just like that, Natalie found herself ensnared in yet another web of exploitation. Meanwhile, her ex-fiancé, heartbroken and blindsided, was left in emotional ruins. The devastation was so profound that he attempted to take his own life. Yet another tragic consequence of Maria's ruthless schemes. From then on, Natalie's life included a shadowy entourage, Sinatra's men, who followed her under the guise of protection. But their watchful eyes didn't shield her from Hollywood's darker side. When she landed the role in Rebel Without a Cause, Natalie wasn't just expected to act like a rebellious teen, she was pressured to prove she could be a bad girl. Cue Nicholas Ray, the 42-year-old director who exploited the vulnerable teenager, coercing her into sleeping with him to secure the role. It was yet another horrifying chapter in Natalie's life, all wrapped in Hollywood's glitzy facade. On the surface, Natalie's life sparkled. Glamorous parties, iconic roles, and the adoration. Beneath the glitz and glamour, Natalie's life was a storm of power plays and heartbreak. That seemed to change when she met Robert Wagner on the set of A Kiss Before Dying. Sparks flew, and their whirlwind romance led to a picture-perfect Hollywood marriage. But while Natalie escaped from her mother's control, she traded one oppressive force for another. Wagner, despite his public adoration of Natalie, had a dark temper. Accusations of infidelity tore their marriage apart, culminating in a dramatic divorce. Natalie remained silent, letting Wagner's narrative stand. But years later, Suzanne Finstad's biography, Natasha, revealed a bombshell. Natalie had discovered Wagner in an affair with another man. Devastated, she fled home, attempted suicide, and survived, but the emotional scars ran deep. Natalie never shared her side of the story, choosing instead to quietly move on. She married British actor Richard Gregerson, had a daughter, and seemed to find happiness. Briefly. That marriage soon fell apart, leaving her single again, but seemingly stronger. Then, as if on cue, she found herself in familiar arms, those of Robert Wagner. Within a year, they remarried, publicly declaring their love stronger and better than ever. Their remarriage quickly turned into a roller coaster with highs of public success and lows that plunged into murky territory. Natalie focused on TV roles to spend more time at home with her kids, while Robert rediscovered his love for sailing, crediting Natalie for reigniting his passion for the sea. That seems sweet, right? Until you remember that gypsy prophecy about water, which suddenly makes it feel like a little less romance and more like tempting fate. That brings us to November 29th, 1981. Robert, Natalie, and Christopher Walken, a mix of Hollywood elite and awkward third wheel, set sail off the coast of Santa Catalina for what should have been a relaxing weekend. Instead, a cocktail of alcohol, old tensions, and bad decisions turned the trip into a stormy mess. The trio's dynamic reportedly flipped between playful banter and fiery arguments, but after a day of heavy drinking, the balance tipped hard toward chaos. At some point during the evening, tempers flared and an explosive fight broke out. Walken, clearly having no interest in playing referee, sought refuge with the boat's captain, Dennis Davern, leaving Robert and Natalie to duke it out. Other boaters in the area later recounted hearing the unmistakable sounds of a heated argument drifting over the water. Eventually, though, the shouting died down and the night settled into an eerie, disquieting silence as everyone turned in. Or so they thought. According to the official account, no one noticed Natalie was missing until around midnight. By the time a search began, it was too late. Natalie's lifeless body was discovered floating near the boat. An autopsy report told a grim but sanitized story. There were bruises on her body, because apparently drowning alone wasn't tragic enough, but no signs of a struggle. The verdict, neat and tidy, was accidental drowning. Case closed. Or at least that's how those with a vested interest in keeping secrets wanted it. For years, that's where the story sat, tucked neatly under a heavy blanket of silence, thanks in part to some of the powerful men who had, let's say, left their mark on Natalie's life. Any new attempt to dig into the details was met with resistance and some jaw-dropping apathy. Take the coroner, for instance, who reportedly waved off any lingering questions with the ominous phrase, "Some things are better left unsaid." And that doesn't exactly scream transparency. But over the years, the official story began to crumble, thanks largely to the shifting accounts of Robert and Christopher. Initially, Wagner claimed that he had no idea how Natalie ended up in the water. Then, as if inspired by late-night brainstorming, he suggested she might have tried to take the dinghy ashore and had fallen out. Because, of course, a woman with a lifelong, very public fear of water would decide at midnight that was the ideal time to go for a solo dinghy adventure. Conveniently, the dinghy itself was missing when the Coast Guard arrived, raising more questions than answers. For many, Wagner's revised account didn't just strain credibility, it reeked of something darker. Why would Natalie, haunted by her mother's gypsy prophecy, willingly climb into a dinghy alone? Not to mention the bruises and the marks on her thighs and shins, suggesting a struggle, as if she'd been resisting something or someone pushing or pulling her toward the water. Add to that the wounds on her neck and head, possibly from being struck hard enough to lose consciousness, and a broken fingernail, a small haunting detail that hinted she may have clawed desperately to save her life. All these clues painted a picture far more chilling than an accidental fall. In 2011, cracks began to form in the silence surrounding Natalie's death once again. Captain Dennis Davern, who was on the boat that night, claimed that Robert Wagner was responsible. When asked for details, he deflected, leaving investigators to dig further. Natalie's sister, Lana Wood, added fuel, alleging Dennis told her Wagner had stopped him from searching for Natalie, allegedly saying, quote, "Leave her there. Teach her a lesson." Dennis's confession led to the case being reopened, with Wagner named as a person of interest, but any new findings remained sealed, leaving the truth as murky as the waters Natalie feared her entire life.